Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Patricia Kirkman, Miss PK. And we have a great guest for everybody.
For sure.
Harman is with us. We are going to hear all about what's happening for us, for everybody in 2025. But first, I want to ask all of you to please follow us on TikTok at Supernatural Girls, and that's GIRLZ, as well as everywhere else, all our social media, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. It's all the same, at Supernatural Girls. So please join us there. I'm going to be adding a lot more content to TikTok, all kinds of little tips and tricks and paranormal stories. So be sure to join us there as well. So PK, what's going on real quick, because we got to get to Jeff.
I want to forgo anything I've got to say because it's a 1 month, fresh starts, new beginnings. Everybody dive into it. You only got a couple of days to clear the path. And I want to talk to Jeff.
All right. We got to bring this man on. He is the man. He is a great astrologer, world renowned. And he's also, as you brought up several times, a Vedic planetary gemologist. He's second generation with us. He's been doing this for, I believe, 40 years. So he is the one to talk to about what's coming and also what just happened, everything with the election. We were just talking about off the air. So, Jeff, come on in. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to be back with you both.
Yeah, it's our pleasure for sure.
Yes.
I think I like you two the most of almost anyone I get on with. You're really good.
Bless your heart.
I love it.
That's so nice. Well, we love you and we love everything you say because it gives us a peek into the future and what we can expect. So where do you want to start with all this? We were talking off the air about what you discovered, that when you looked at the charts about the election, you knew Trump was going to win. You're one of the few astrologers that predicted that accurately also.
Yeah. On my YouTube channel, Jeff Harman Astrologer, we actually last summer, I was beginning to actually begin to wonder, is the propaganda machine actually going to win here? They poured so much money. And of course, every celebrity, we don't have talk shows anymore. We're all old enough to remember Johnny Carson. I loved him,
I did too.
And of course, you go back a little further, Jack Benny, remember him? So, anyways, what's so awesome is the propaganda machine didn't win and Trump did win. And I actually looked at the interrogation astrology. And for anybody curious what that is, that's actually asking a question. A lot of modern astrologers know it as horary. In India, we call it prashna. And it's not your birth chart. You just cast a chart for the moment. And you can look at anything under literally the sun. And I said, is Trump going to win? And I had other clients asking, geez, is Harris going to pull this off? And I said, no, the chart shows he wins. And boy, did he. So
yes, he won everything.
Thank God.
Yes, we are so lucky to have him. It's great. Every day is Christmas now for those of us who support him. So yes.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I noticed one of the things I've always looked at is coronations and inaugurations. Of course, this is the presidency. It's an inauguration. But if you look back through history, they would call them coronations, or the time at which a leader, a president, an emperor, or a king would be sworn in to whatever capacity they were taking over. Well, the inauguration charts of presidents have really been indicative of what's happened. And I had mentioned Biden's inauguration chart wasn't dismal. It was like just an abrupt disaster. And it has been. And when you look at what has happened the last 4 years, I mean, wow. I mean, I'm always upset a little bit when the governors say, well, it was almost criminal what Biden did. It wasn't almost. It was criminal. Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, we're seeing, and I know a lot of people are upset, about illegal aliens. I do have friends and clients who have people working for them who are here, maybe not as legally as they should be. And there are good people who are going to be removed. But then again, when you look at the sovereignty of a nation, if you do not have laws and people can just come in and do whatever they want, you're going to end up with where we are right now. And I was mentioning the United States has been going through a Pluto return. And the irony is it gets two of them. Why? Because we have the tropical zodiac, which always happens a bit earlier in birth charts of nations that are older. The United States is exactly 248 years old. So the Pluto return actually happened right when Biden was getting in on the tropical system. And the sidereal, ironically, just ended. The Pluto return. And for anyone asking, what the heck is that, right? Pluto is the transformer. It's like a flamethrower. It's like taking coins or metal and putting it in a pot, melting it down, and it transforms into something new. So, I know a lot of people say, yeah, but Pluto isn't a planet. Let me tell you, everything I've ever seen in almost 50 years of doing astrology, in fact, it will be 50 years this year. 1975 was the first year my mother exposed me to astrology. So it's been 50 years and kind of fun.
Just a growing boy.
Yeah, just a growing boy, yes. So, but, and I got to tell you, Patricia, I'm so happy about you. My God. Yeah, I mean, you are such a wonderful example. You give me hope, and I don't want to mention your age on the air unless you let me. But I mean, you are so amazing at your age. I mean, you're just sharp as a tack and you look great.
Doesn't she though?
Nobody can believe it. Run away with you. That's it.
No, she is.
So you want to tell people how old you are, or should I keep it?
You can tell them. I don't care.
You are 88 years old, 3 months and 11 days as we speak. I'm not that smart. The computer figures it out. I'm looking at you and go, my God, you could pass her in your 50s. You look great.
Absolutely.
You really, and I'm not patronizing. You really look, and you're sharp. You're right there. My grandmother passed away at 102 years old.
Wow.
And let me tell you, if there's anybody I miss, it's that lady. She was born in 1907. She died in 2009. And I used to sit up with her till 3 o'clock in the morning, talking about UFOs, about angels, about all this stuff. She was so amazing. I was one of the most amazing ladies I've ever had in my life was my grandmother. I just absolutely adore her.
That's great.
And,
that's so special.
And sharp. Oh my God. I mean, even in her she ran her business. She had a baking business in Kenosha, Wisconsin. She ran it until she was 90. I think she was 95 or 96. She was starting to fall a little bit.
Gosh.
Good for her.
Yes, but that's what keeps you young,
Oh, definitely.
I mean, PK is still seeing clients, doing their charts, and it's exciting. It keeps you going, right?
Well, PK, you're in a Mars Dasha. And you might say, what the heck is that? Well, that's a Mars planetary period. You actually stay in that until 2029. And interestingly enough for you, that also is in the 8th house. It's very strong. I like it a lot. So I took a quick look-see at your chart.
I'm glad you did.
I better glance at this before I get online with her. But absolutely amazing. And, you've got such an unusual chart. You were born just after a new moon. And, people always say, well, what is astrology? And I always say, well, astrology is not us. It's like a big funnel comporting the soul root energies down into time and space, which is what we call our reality. If you get around the yogis in India or the Tibetan lamas or any of the other spiritual types of people, they'll all tell you the whole physical world's an illusion, right? And I always say, well, I don't know if I buy that one. Drop a brick on your foot or hit your hand with a hammer. Call me on the 1st of the month. It's not an illusion. It's pretty doggone real. But they're right in one sense. And that is, when we see our loved ones pass away, or we hear about OBEs, out of body, near-death experiences, etc. Are they real? You bet they are. And I love that stuff, that whole realm. And I really differ from a lot of astrologers. I really love the Vedic or the Naadi astrology. Naadi is the palm leaves, and it's also the science of looking into the soul's journey, because we really are spiritual beings having a physical experience.
Exactly.
And it's interesting. I always say God created time so everything wouldn't happen at once. And that's what really this realm is. And if you think about the divinity of magic, of conception in a woman's womb, in an animal's womb, even in the earth itself, farmer puts the seed in the ground, right? So it's so magical that spirit gets manifest and concretized into physical form on the earth. And they claim there's hundreds of planets just like Earth that are either above or below in evolution. And science is yet to really corroborate this, but many of the ancient documents in the Vedas and in the ancient sacred texts, many of these cultures knew this. And they actually say every 4.3 billion years, God yanks in the rug and recreates everything. It's called a kalpa. It's actually mentioned in the Vedas. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Because in physics, they actually guesstimate that the Earth is about 4.3 billion years old, or 4 billion years old. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So how many civilizations have there been? Goodness.
And then they talk about a maha kalpa. Let's see, maha means major and kalpa means time unit. And they say it could be like 250 billion something years of these cycles happen. So when you talk about angels and spirits and souls, the time relevance is totally different than our perception of reality. You think about it, sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight is a day, and a cycle around the year is the sun. So we are clearly in a reality machine here where spirit manifests. And I always liken the earth to a grounding rod. If you take electricity, you only have a potential difference if you have a reference to ground, right? You could hold on to 1,000,000 volts if you weren't grounded, you see. And then the minute you ground it, though, you have a potential difference. And this is why I think the earth is that grounding rod for consciousness and experience to happen.
Interesting. So, you talk about other planets and other dimensions with all of that. When you look at the chart of the United States and the people living here and in the world, what do you think is going to happen with UFO disclosure? We've always said they're never going to tell us the truth. But what are you seeing with that, Jeff?
Well, just going by the inauguration chart of Donald Trump, do you know, I did research. I went all the way back to the beginning of George Washington, who was inaugurated in 1779, not in Washington, D.C., the District of Criminals. Of course, it's now changing. It's not going to be they might put it back to the District of Columbia soon. But Washington was inaugurated at the Federal Building in New York.
Oh.
So isn't that interesting? I didn't know that until I did some research. And his inauguration was, of course, the first president. Well, I went through every single inauguration, which was only 47, so it wasn't that hard to do. And not a single president in the United States was inaugurated with the sun, which is indicative of the president, the leader, conjuncting Pluto. When Trump was signed in, the sun was within 40-something minutes of arc of conjunction. That's a fancy term that just means 1 degree is 60 minutes. So just to give you an idea, that was, just less than a degree of conjunction of the sun. Well, what does that mean in plain English? If you research all the inauguration charts, they all mirror what seems to unfold over the next 4 years of that presidency.
Okay.
And this means we are going to see fundamental changes in this country like we have never seen before. There's only one president that was signed in during his inauguration that had another aspect to Pluto, and that was the sun opposition Pluto. See, Pluto takes 200 and almost 50 years to go around the solar system, or the birth chart. So if you take the birth chart, which most astrologers use for the United States birth, it's 1776, the signing of the Declaration of Independence. That's what most people go by. And I find that to be highly accurate. Well, Washington wasn't signed in until a number of years later. as the first president, right? Because they were busy not only completing the war, because remember, 1776 is when they said, okay, we're going to war. And they did, and we won. And there's so many amazing mystical experiences that are on record about Washington having visitations from angels telling him not to give up during Valley Forge. And speaking of New York, that's when they made the secret attack, the famous one across the Potomac, and Washington won. And he was not only personally destitute, but, soldiers were barefoot. They didn't have much left in terms of ammunition and food, and their supplies were depleted. It's all about money. It takes money to fight a war. And he was told, do not give up. And of course, was the famous battle in New York where he won. And that was a big turning point in the war. Well, anyways, back to what I'm going. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, so that means when you talk about fundamental changes in this country, certainly we can see that happening even now, just at the very beginning of
yes,
tremendous.
And they're much needed. Also, I mean, these are not extraneous changes. These are much needed. They've been needed for many, many, many years. And then
we were on a collision course at Mach 3 to the ground without landing gear. We would have been destroyed. We'd have been destroyed.
Yes, absolutely. That was the plan, wasn't it? Did you see that in Biden's chart?
In the country's chart, that was the Pluto return.
Okay.
In the country's chart, yeah. Plus, what's interesting is during the Biden administration, we had a Neptune squaring Mars. And you might say, well, what does that mean? Confusion, trickery, and delusion. This is exactly.
We had all that.
They were blowing smoke up our rear ends and telling us, "Oh, we're taking care of you." Yeah. Oh, really? No.
So, do you see anything being done to the Biden family for the crap and chaos they brought out?
I'll make a prediction. I'll go out on a limb and make a prediction. Because of Trump's inauguration chart, I not only see that ball of yarn coming unraveled, I think Biden's whole presidency could get undone, not necessarily by Trump, but indirectly because of the research that Congress and the House and the Senate are going to be performing. Pam Bondi, God bless her soul, I hope she gets in real fast, because the real powers in the judicial system is not only the Supreme Court, but the Department of Justice.
Right.
And when you have, this guy who we've had in here, I call him Ichabod Crane. Of course, he's nuts. I mean, when you look at the way he looks and he's really looked the other way. And it's unreal. When you look at the criminality that has gone on, not only in the Biden family, but elsewise, this is why what else would Biden give all the pardons he did to people that didn't even get charged with anything? They're really worried. If I were, the Cheneys, and if I were many of these other people, the Clintons and so many others, I'd be packing my bags and looking at a place for sovereignty right now, because I think it's going to come unraveled. I really do.
That's very interesting. As I was listening to Tucker talk about this very issue from a different perspective, and but it basically supports what you say, that the whole thing could come undone because there's too many questions around who was really running the country. And if they find out that, in fact, Biden wasn't, it was somebody else, somebody thought it was Blinken.
And they're going to find it out. Well,
okay.
Now that rabbit hole goes real deep. Okay. Now, a good friend of mine who passed away in 2008, you may have heard of him, George Carlin. He said it best. He said, forget the politicians. You have owners. They own everything. If there's a little book you might want to grasp, you may have heard of it. There's a guy named David Webb who essentially was a very high level hedge fund guy in the 90s. And he wrote a book just recently called The Great Taking. It's free. You can go to David Webb's website, download it. I encourage people to do this. He is talking about how the bankers see this, and look at what Trump is saying. Okay, Trump is talking about tariffs. Do you know who instrumented or implemented tariffs? It was Taft, William Taft, the president before Wilson. And what's interesting is Taft got out in 1913. Well, when Wilson got in right at the end of 1913, he signed in a little something you may have heard of called the Federal Reserve Act. Yes. The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. It is an entity that operates behind the scenes. In fact, Aaron Russo did a great documentary called From Freedom to Fascism on this. Now, listen to Trump now. Just listen carefully. What is he saying? I'm going to use tariffs. He says it's the most powerful thing in the world. That's what Taft, he even mentions Taft. He's also talking about getting rid of the IRS. He's also talking about the Reserve. See, these are the owners. Forget BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, and George Soros and all these. Yes, they're there, and they are definitely empowered and fanning out all this stuff. But when you look at the real owners, it's the bankers at the top of the pyramid. Right. Now, back to David Webb. David Webb specifically stated in this book that that everything you own, this jacket I got on, the bankers technically have rights to it because of the federal debt. We are $36 trillion in debt. Do you know?
Crazy.
It's beyond staggering. I always mention, I did a math exercise. Just stick with me here for a second. If you're 40 years old, you are just a little over 1 billion seconds old. If you're 80 years old, you're just a little over 2 billion seconds old. And if you take 1 trillion seconds, just fathom this, 1 trillion seconds is 11,700 and something odd years. I forget all the details, but that's what it is. That gives you a little bit of a concept to wrap your brain around, or my brain around, the enormity of 36 trillion or even 1 trillion. Who has that kind of collateral? Nobody. These guys have had a license to print money, the greatest monopoly in the history of modern society, at least. And they did it through the United States. And what's interesting is the whole Western financial system is regulated. My camera will come right back on. It does that. It times out. I'm using a Canon camera, but you can still hear me. The bottom line is, where am I going with all this? If he, meaning Trump, eliminates the Federal Reserve and puts the power, Thomas Jefferson said it best. He said, if anyone ever gets to print our money, they will be more dangerous than any standing armies. In fact, many of the forefathers said that. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? Wilson, on his deathbed, he actually, it's on record, you can read it in the Wikipedia, he actually said, I sold my great country. And I believe they poisoned him. There was rumors, it was just like Biden, that his wife was running the country behind the scenes vicariously through the owners. And you look at World War I, broke out right after that. Not a historian drawing breath can definitively say what happened with World War I. Well, I'm not a historian, but I don't have those letters behind my name, but I would say that my take is this was a restructuring of the global financial system. And then David Webb also mentions in this book about the Great Depression, which my grandmother had told me about. She says, Jeff, she goes, people were jumping out of windows. My grandmother lived just north of Chicago, and she actually went to the Chicago School of Art during this time, or right before it, I think it was. And she said it was amazing. She says there was horses and cars still on the streets. This is the 20s. And she said you couldn't believe it. She said it was surreal what was happening. And David Webb mentions how he went back. And this guy is very knowledgeable. And this is a book, The Great Taking, where he speaks about they purposely, the bankers, the Fed, the guys behind the scene, the ones behind the Titanic, that conspiracy. Well, anyways, long story short, apparently they let this major kingpin or linchpin in the New York bank fail, which just was a domino effect across the country. And that was the bankers' way of saying, we're running this place. And if you want it back, you're going to do it our ways. And they did. And of course, they did it their way. And this is the origins of the deep state, the swamp. Everybody's, parroting that word, but really it's much deeper than that. You follow the money.
You do. You do. Absolutely. But now with all of these fundamental changes taking place, it is rescuing our country, pulling it up out of the muck and mire that
more than we'll ever know. More than we'll ever know. I'm telling you, we're about to witness the United States become the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And that's the meaning of Pluto returns.
Well, that's fantastic, because now you're talking about fundamental changes that will really make a positive difference in everybody's life, like getting rid of the IRS. I also have heard lots of people talk about what's going to be coming after that is getting rid of property taxes, which would be fantastic, even though, most of that nonsense and corruption is on the local level. That still needs to go. And I think we finally have people in office who, not locally, but nationally who are very interested in seeing that go too. So a lot of the burdens of all that we have to do just to live every day, who we have to pay every day, will be lifted. And that is fantastic. So getting back to UFOs and the lack of disclosure, because they've been playing games with us for a long time. And I know most people in the government don't even have this information. But what do you see in the chart with that? Because I know, obviously, let me just say that, yes, the JFK files, the MLK files, they're all being released. That's right. Good. But this other UFO stuff is so deeply buried and compartmentalized.
So deeply
What
buried.
do you think? What do you think about
I think it's going to come out. I really do. Reagan was one who was kind of hinting at it all.
Right.
Did you know that Reagan even did the narration on the movie V? Remember the TV series V? It was short-lived. Yes. Yeah, remember that? Yeah, back in the 80s, yeah. And I think Reagan wanted to bring it out, but he was told not to.
Yeah.
I've had such a wonderful journey in my own life with the whole UFO experiences. I've had motorcycles literally shut down. The electric system wouldn't run. And then the next day it would run fine. I've had missing time. I've had so many different experiences myself. And, I knew Dr. Lear and so many people. I mean, and back in the early days, Camille and I were like always going to UFO and meetings, MUFON and all that. And George Parks in Tucson, who you probably remember, Patricia. Both of you. Wonderful guy. I loved him. And anyways, so many people have brought out information. It's undeniable. I think we're going to see it come out. And I think Trump will probably be a catalyst behind that. I personally believe our government has been getting reverse engineering opportunities from probably as far back as in World War II. There's no question in my mind. When you look at transistors and tubes and all the things in the etymologies and Tesla and so many things. I mean, Tesla, if he was alive today, he'd be stunned because everything he proposed to the government is coming true. Yeah. I mean, it's getting like Terminator. And I really believe, when you look at Admiral Byrd and all the stuff that went on, people can research that on the internet, that like literally he took a squadron, and our government and other governments would not be funding millions of dollars of hardware to go to Antarctica. There's an opening, and Byrd said he went down there. He was actually brought down by this advanced civilization. They forced him down, and they told him, listen, you guys, we know you're nuclear now. You try and blow this place up, we will stop you. And, George Parks had me do a study on all of, and so did Roger Scheer, had me look at all these events from Travis Walton to Minot Air Force Base, Snippy the Horse, on, mutilations. Of course, now there's all kinds of shows about this. And unequivocally, it showed up. I've even worked with remote viewing groups where we've seen, the celestial influences are interacting with accuracy and inaccuracies at the time the remote viewers would do what they do. So
there's so much proof everywhere. That's not the issue. The issue is more that they have this technology that could really make everybody's lives so much easier and better, including medical technology. And they keep wanting to manipulate, control, and gaslight us on reality. So, and it's really interesting to me because a lot of people still have this banter about, well, everybody would go crazy if they knew. Well, when all those drones were flying around, it was really fun to watch social media because everybody was saying, I really don't care unless they're going to pay my mortgage or my grocery bills. Otherwise, I could care less if they're UFOs or who cares? Down to brass tacks. And I thought that was a really great response. All of that much kind of stuff that went on with the drones.
Well, Chris Bledsoe is a friend of mine. I met him.
Yeah. We had him on the show. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. And his son as well. And so many people I've met, the term UFO is such a broad spectrum term, and now it's UAP, right? Yeah. I'd have to say you could literally chop this whole subject up into so many different things. There's demonic forces. There are I believe all kinds of different divisions of demonic, angelic, and extraterrestrial. And I think there's terrestrial beings that have been living on this earth probably since before we have been.
Oh,
And
definitely.
the Book of Enoch talks about this. Urantia talks about this. Many of the Vedantic documents talk about it all the time. But one of the things I find that gets left out a bit, in my opinion at least, is divinity. I mean, when you look at the magic, like we mentioned before, of creation, whether it's a child conceived in a woman's womb or an animal's womb or the earth itself, I mean, science has got a long way to go before it can imbue spirit into matter. Now, cloning and all that, that's duplicating what's there. I always loved Sir Francis Crick, if you guys remember him. He was the guy who unraveled the genetic code, him and Watson. And they literally, all the senators, we're going to know everything, right? And Sir Francis Crick got up and he said, you know, maybe, just maybe in 1,000 years, we'll figure out what we did. And that this is the magic of life. And it's divine. And if the UFOs or the aliens or the bad guys could take this place over, they would have a long time ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a divine planet. Even though all of us, you know, I do this every day, reading said, why is this happening? And that we're all here experiencing the magic of life. And no matter how you slice it, I always say astrology is the science of God created time, so everything would happen at once. And I really believe it's true. So I think we are, if we could see the angels and the spirits and the intelligences around us, they literally say every planet has a hierarchy of archangels, angels, spirits, and intelligences beneath it. And they act like a multi-dimensional switch. And then the astral planes, which they claim, there could be here. I would love to, if I can, could I show a quick diagram?
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
let's do that. I'll show you. This is one of my favorite diagrams to show, and it's going to take me a minute here to fish it out of the computer here. I call them computers, not computers, but because they are. Can you guys see what I'm doing here? So. Yeah. Okay, good. So let me just see if I can find the right one. Yeah, looks like it's this one. Can you see this diagram right here?
Yes.
Okay, good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up another program here just so I can point, because it'll make it a little bit easier, and you're going to see me, my chisel head, come in here, and then I'm going to turn it off. So yeah, we turn that off, and then we're going to share this goofy thing here. Hang on. Sorry, it's taking a minute, but we'll get there. So yeah, here we go. So now we're going to run back to that diagram, and this just gives me tools to annotate with.
Very good.
So what I love about this particular diagram, which I use a lot, whatever your concept of God or creation is, it's certainly above creation. I don't think anyone can define what God is. I certainly can't. And this Ein Sof War is the light coming down into what we would call creation. And it's believed our soul might be created right here at the very top of these multiple trees of life. And there's no astrology up here. I always tell astrologers, the soul is far senior, and so is the spirit, to astrology. And they claim there could be literally 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions in each one of these. And this diagram is so rudimentary that it could nowhere near ever show, but it's a framework of which we can see. The next worlds down is this is what many of the Brahmins call Brahmaloka, or you could say these very high heavens, which again, there's 49 dimensions and 49 subdimensions. Now notice this one here. Many people listening may have heard of a text in the Hebrew and Aramaic called the Sefer Yetzirah. Sefer is book, Yetzirah means formation. This is where the molecular physical worlds start happening, or what we would call time and space. Now, they claim there's 49 parallel universes and 49 subdimensions. I can't balance my checkbook, let alone even fathom something like that. I mean, it's way deeper than we could ever fathom. Now, this is where time and space starts. It's also something that's very interesting. In the West, we have the Garden of Eden story, right? Eve ate the apple, gave it to Adam, and ticked off God and he cast us down. So if you look at all of the cultures, the Chaldeans, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Vedas, almost every single culture talks about a war in heaven where God got ticked off and cast down the evil spirits, also known as the fourth hierarchy. See, each of these divine angels are the four hierarchies, which are huge categories. So, again, there's Lucifer, Satan, Belial, and Leviathan. Now, in modern religions, we usually get some guy with a suit tie and a microphone telling us about the devil, right? But it's just a little bit deeper than that. And you got these 8 beneath, and there's legions upon legions upon legions here. It is believed in many of the ancient texts, particularly the Vedas, that these spirits are imprisoned in matter itself. Look at an atom, positive, negative, day, night. You always have juxtaposing forces around some center point called divinity and creation. So the evil spirits are imprisoned not only in Earth, but quite potentially in all the 49 parallel universes. Now, this is way beyond my comprehension, but the texts seem to indicate that. And what's interesting, this is why everything beneath the heavens of the physical worlds, and I do say that plurally, will be born, it will grow, it will mature experience, it will atrophy, and it will die. Not a single one of us will experience it in the physical plane any different. I don't care if we're a human kingdom, plant kingdom, alien, angel kingdom, we're all going to experience that cycle. And even the earth itself gets destroyed and recreated. So the fabric of the physical worlds seems to be forced to be in concert with the divine and the evil angels by force. And that might be their imprisonment. That's why we always find good and evil throughout the world. Always. There's always a bad guy, always a good guy.
And what you're describing is complex. So
yeah.
Part of the issue that I see with the government is they can't wrap their heads around it completely either. They don't have all the answers. Nope. And then their reluctance to turn over the truths that they do have to us is profound because their ownership of all of this falls apart. So again, you talk about the fact that, well, you've made several predictions here. One, that the Biden crime family, all that stuff's going to unravel.
I think it's going to be even deeper than that. I think you're going to see a lot of the stuff with J6, but even deeper than that. I think you're going to see stuff that's going to go back in time. That's going to get unraveled. Again, this whole thing here, I'll stop sharing here. And just before I jump off here, let me just finish because it relates to this. Yeah, the good and evil. See, the soul gets trapped here. There's an ancient legend that's really cool. They actually say, and it's kind of small, I don't know on this program. Oh, yeah, here, I could do it this way. See, now watch. If I shove this up here, let me see if I can get a hand here. Here, I do it this way. So they actually say, there's an ancient legend, and it's not a legend in my opinion, where our soul gets fished out of the astral worlds or the lower heavens and gets attached by silver cord to mom's embryo at conception, not at birth. And then at the end of the period of gestation, which is for most of us about 9 months, right? We then exit the womb and the umbilical cord is cut on the cross of matter between her feet, which is the earth. So the earth is a place of manifestation. And what's interesting is astrology acts like a funnel, if you will, channeling in all of this karmic energy of time, place, and experience to this physical world and life. So it's much more divine. And, back to what you were just saying, back to the reality of what's going on with this particular administration and all the other things that are happening right now in time, the United States is 248 years old. It is just now experienced literally a Pluto return. And we were either going to be destroyed or the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And I could tell you when Trump got in, whether you like Trump or hate Trump, I think he personally is going to bring about something we have never seen before. Am I done sharing now? I think I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're back. We're back.
Those fundamental changes are very exciting. And like we talked about, we're seeing some of that. And then the Biden stuff coming unwound and exposed it may negate a lot of those pardons, and other things may fall as a result of what is divulged and what
it's going to take Congress, the Supreme Court, and the Senate to do it. But I think it's going to happen.
Okay.
And I think the evidence is going to happen there. Here's the other thing. I want to emphasize just how significant Trump's inauguration chart was. Do you know that I looked the next time, if we continue to have our inaugurations on January 20th, which we have been, there has been a number of presidents like LBJ, that criminal, was signed in November because of the death of, or I should say the murder of JFK. And there was certain inaugurations done in the spring, in March and April. But for the most part, all presidents are inaugurated on January 20th. And the reason they did that, that's an old Masonic thing. See, at noon, the sun is close to the midheaven, and the sun always represents the leader. So, our forefathers were steeped in astrology. Benjamin Franklin used to put out an almanac called Poor Richard's Almanac. Amazing. And so that, and I know the Catholics, they hate the Masons, right? That's a war. So, but we won't go into that one. Anyhow, the bottom line is, the next time I see a president who could be inaugurated on a Sun-Pluto conjunction is 250 years from now.
Wow. So this is a really profound moment, no question. So what other things do you see? Because again, what our audience is going to want to know is what's going to happen that's going to really impact them. What fundamental changes do you see coming from the charts that you've looked at? How is it going to affect people that are in this country listening to the show?
Well, from an astrological standpoint, I'll give you this one. There's something called primary direction. That's a fancy word ancient astrologers used to use for the rotation of the earth. And even if you're a flat earther, it's still the daily cycles of sunrise, noon, sunset, and midnight. So, and again, we have the annual movement of the sun around all the signs, which is our seasons, right? Well, here's what's interesting. If you take the birth chart of the United States, which has been really accurate, I got to tell you, from everything I've been seeing happening here over the last number of years, we have now the United States has the sun trining Jupiter. And by the way, in Trump's inauguration chart, we have the same thing. Not only is the sun conjuncting Pluto, which is an outer planet, and I know a lot of people don't believe Pluto's a planet, right? It's too small and all that. But my experience of Pluto, have it transit over you sometime. And believe me, you'll know it's there. I know I've had it happen. And many people I've talked to have had it happen. They said, Christ, what's going on? I said, you got a Pluto transit. And they go, yeah, I don't believe in astrology, but you're right. It's certainly doing something. Well, bottom line is, after Trump's Sun-Pluto conjunction, which is the first year in office, it's actually by primary direction, each degree is a year. So 45 minutes of arc is 9 months. See, 30 minutes is 6, 15 is 3. So it's just math once you get past the headiness of it. So the first year is going to be profound, jaw-dropping changes. And we're seeing it already. I mean, look at this guy hasn't been in office, 10 days. And we're seeing more change than we've seen in the last 10 years. I mean, it's stunning. And, hate them or love them, I'll tell you what, I'm so excited about what's happening. The only reason people hate them is because the propaganda machines. Remember Johnny Carson? That was one of my favorite shows. I mean, that was a real talk show host. And now we don't have talk shows. We have propagandists.
Well, we do. I mean, Johnny Carson, as you remember, never wanted to talk about politics and advised people not to. He said, keep it with what you are. You're an entertainer. He was right to do that. But
these guys are really with politics. So the sun trining Jupiter, I'll just finish that, was in Trump's chart, which means during his presidency, the sun was trining Jupiter. I forget the degrees of orbs, but each degree is a year. The effects that are happening are going to be so profound. And I'm so happy. I have a son. I know you guys probably have children and grandchildren. Thank God for them. We've lived a couple of minutes. They have a future of a country that is so profound. I mean, I always tell people, get the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. There's a simple book you can buy. I put it on the screen on my podcast. I mean, just read how intelligent and foresightful our founding fathers were. I mean, it may not be perfect, but I'll tell you what, it's a great experiment in human freedom. I don't care who you are, how tall, fat, what color you are, skinny, or belief. In the United States of America, you have the blessings of true freedom. And I can tell you that criminal that just walked out of the White House was a communist. He wasn't a president. He was a communist.
Yes, he was. And you saw that.
We had a war between the globalists and the nationalists. I always say, forget the politics. You literally had the owners at the top. They, like Klaus Schwab parroted, they wanted you to own nothing. Read The Great Taking. And believe me, we own nothing if they keep in power. Right. They will take everything. You will literally be broke, and the worst kind of communism. It will make 1984, the book by George Orwell, look like a cakewalk where they were going.
Right.
What Trump just did is he just stuck a wedge right in the middle of it. Even if they killed Trump today, they couldn't stop all the things that are now moving forward to protect the freedoms of this country.
Which is fantastic. So,
Jeff,
I'm sorry, go ahead, PK.
I was going to ask, there's so much going on right now. People are talking about, they're worried about banks maybe failing and going to Bitcoin. What do you suggest on something like that? What do you get on that?
Well, I'm never here to tell anybody what to do.
No, but I think don't know where to look. People don't know where to look.
No, I get it. And these banks, we're seeing, look at these people who by, certain banks were canceling their accounts. I mean, and the censorship that we've seen, this is all going to stop. I think we're going to see hiccups and a lot of changes here over this next year. This is the sun conjuncting Pluto. I mean, your jaw's going to drop, I think, by the end of this year, all what happens. And the communists are really, the bazooka has turned towards them right here on the bullseye. And I think we're going to see changes that are so positive. We just got to be strong to get there. And I think crypto is a really good way to go. In fact, they're actually working at putting in laws right now, and that's all going to shake out. But I think crypto's a great way to go, and we actually have a possibility of it going forward. When the United States can print its own money, you know what JFK tried to do? Tried to issue treasury bonds. That's what killed him. Same thing with Lincoln. He was going to do the same thing. By the way, I was starting to mention earlier, Lincoln was signed in on his inauguration, not the first one, the second one, right on a Sun-Pluto opposition. He was shot right after that. He was shot. Trump was signed in on a Sun conjunct Pluto. People listening just go, oh, what does that mean, right? Well, transformation. This is going to transform this country back into something it never was. And I don't think it's just going to be making America great again. I think it's going to make America the land it was intended to be and never fully got there. I think it's going to be miraculous. I really do. And this whole thing about Panama and Canada and Mexico, I mean, personally, I think Trump's a genius when he said, well, how much money are we paying you, Mr. Trudeau? Well, you give us $250 million a year. Well, wait a minute. What are we getting for that? Well, nothing. What would happen if we didn't give it to you? Well, we'd probably go bankrupt and become the 51st state. I think that's ingenious. What do you think?
I think it's great. And the whole idea was to get him to step down because he was destroying his country, much like what we were experiencing under Biden. So,
there's a communist right there.
Yeah,
that man, it's rumored he's, the descendant,
son,
quite possibly the son of, Castro.
Yeah. So, it's all amazing to see this come together so quickly. What about healthcare? Because there's going to be some big changes with that, too.
I don't know on that one. I don't have a snappy answer. I could certainly look at it, in terms of where it's going. What I like to use in astrology is something called interrogation astrology. If you want, I can cast a chart and see what it says. You want me to do that?
We only have, you can, but we only have.
I can take 2 minutes and do it. Here, hang on. So your question is...
Jeff is a genius. He can do anything.
All right.
Well, no, I'm not.
That.
I know enough to be completely dangerous. So healthcare, let me just take a look at this. So what I'm doing, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm looking up at a screen above me.
Right.
Okay.
I literally just cast a chart.
We've got 5 minutes, just so you know.
I think in the next 6 or 7 months, you're going to see huge changes in that. And I would tend to say... that's going to be interesting. I tend to say, and I know we only got a few minutes here, and I need more time to interpret the gravity of this one, but it tends to look like free enterprise is going to come back and empowerment of the people's money is going to come back where we can actually afford healthcare. The biggest thing I love is RFK getting in. I don't care what they say about him. RFK, I remember as a little kid, back in the, I was born in the late 50s. So the early 60s, my brother and I used to stand outside and watch a guy pull up like on the Rat Patrol. Remember that TV series? If anybody hasn't, check it out. The guy had a pair of goggles and a turret. He was spraying the trees with DDT as my brother stood there and breathed it in.
Yeah.
What's been going on, especially the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, poison has been just infiltrated. In the farming, the government has been behind this, and the owners at the top of the pyramid have been funding it. All this junk protein with soy, dumbed down, and so much stuff. I think we're going to see really, I'll give you this. It looks like change, and it's going to be positive when it's all done.
Well, that just sounds fantastic. And
I'm not trying to, also, paint a blue sky picture here.
No, but I mean, I'll tell you, it's in both PK and I have been talking about the emotional situation for people who love Trump and can see what's happening. The happiness quotient has gone way high. I mean,
we have a country again.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's
free.
So exciting for people like us who have this perspective. So
and I do have compassion for these people who are here illegally, who are good people.
Right.
Who aren't the criminals, but they also have to realize, I know if I went to England, how many clients I talk to who are in different countries and they say, well, I got to leave. Well, why you got to leave? Well, my visa's running out. Can't stay there. Why can they stay here? Maybe there can be legal remedies where they can actually get into it. But I mean, truly, folks, we got to have it to where, we're allowed to have a country,
and have a board.
Yeah, have a voice. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and so all of that is to our advantage so that we can get things the way they should be. And then it'll be easier for everybody. But this has been wonderful having you here. This has been so great. And the confirmation that we can all breathe a sigh of relief and look forward to this year and the whole next term that he's in.
For sure.
Yeah. The owners aren't going to stop, though. What I've been mentioning on my, I encourage people to tune into my my webcasts that I put out on my YouTube channel. We have Uranus every 84 to 86 years goes around the solar system, and Uranus is the wild card. The last time it's sweeping over the Pleiades right now, which are the seven sisters in the ancient lore. Remember the Greeks and the legends about the seven sisters of Hades. And some people say it's the other way. It's the seven sisters of heaven or whatever. But every time Uranus goes over that, which is every 84 to 86 years, we have change and calamity in the world. Well, the last time it happened was World War II. The time before that was the Civil War. I'm just leapfrogging back 84 to 86 years. Time before that was a Revolutionary War. Time before that, go into England, the Black Plague, all this stuff. So the world always goes through dramatic transformations that always end up with power restructured. And this is where we're at right now. I think this one is so different because of Trump and what he's establishing. The people he's putting in place, I think, are miraculous. I really do.
Yeah, we agree. Yeah,
agree. Could not.
But we've got to wrap, unfortunately, Jeff. We've run out of time. And
thanks for having me. It was great.
So great seeing you again.
And Patricia, bless your heart, man. I mean, if I can be half as cognizant of you at your age, at 88, going on 89, can you let me know what you're eating for breakfast?
Yeah, really.
It's coffee, strictly coffee.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, me too. Love coffee. Yeah.
Okay, for everybody who would like their own private session, it's jeffharman.com. Go to his website. You can schedule with him there. He's also an expert in gems and what gems you should be wearing.
Yeah, we do a lot of gems for
all
people.
That. So, yes, everybody be aware of that. And we'll be back next week with a haunting, a big one. So be sure to join us. And until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Jen.